So I thought I would share a tool with you complete with visual graphics that will dramatically help you get through stressful situations and grow your capacity for what life is. It's very useful for any kind of therapy work you're doing, any work around emotional regulation. It's really useful to teach to children and to work with within yourself and to practice this so that you can grow your capacity through most of what life throws at you. So I call this the arc of experience. So the arc of experience is where we understand that all things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So every experience that we have has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Nothing lasts forever. This is crucial for you to understand. So what happens is that for many of us, we go into some kind of an experience, whether it's an internal experience with a particularly intense emotion like grief or anger or feelings of disorientation, anxiety, things like that, or an external experience where something is happening to us that is causing us a great degree of stress. And one of the things that happens for many of us is we imagine that if we don't stop the experience from happening, if we don't shut it down somehow or shut ourselves down somehow, that this is going to happen to us, that we're just going to fly right off the planet or something really bad will happen. We have this feeling that if we don't shut it down, something really, really bad is going to happen to us. We don't know what it is, and it's like the monster under the bed, but it causes most of us to kind of freak out. So the way that the arc of experience and our inability to handle the experiences that we have, meaning they cause us way more stress than they should. Typically, what happens is that when we're young, before our nervous system is fully developed, so before the age of, say, 25 or 26 years old, before we fully have nervous system capacity, and even beyond that time when we're still not skillful with how much capacity we actually have, what happens is that we have this little body that does not have a fully developed nervous system. And this little body will experience something far too intense coming into it. And when we have the experience of this intensity in a system that cannot handle it, the result is that we begin to limit the experiences that we have. We don't ever want them to get anywhere close to that experience that fried our nervous system, caused trauma, freaked us out, gave us some kind of an imprint of I can't handle too much stress. So what we want to do is we want to really think about the fact that we are no longer limited like this small child, that we actually have these fully developed nervous systems, and we don't need to keep shutting down our experience. So the way that we do this is we want to observe when an experience begins to ramp up in intensity. Where do we hit our capacity zone or our lack of capacity, where we need to be able to grow the capacity we have for the experience we're having? So in other words, we have to break the habit of acting like we've only got a limited nervous system of a child or of a younger person. And it's typically that bottom line here in this capacity zone is when we hit that ramp up and we start to panic, we get unduly stressed. Some people might say we feel triggered. We lose our ability to be regulated and our stress just goes way up. So what you want to begin to do is, first of all, you want to tell yourself, I actually have very different capacity than maybe I even realize. Most of us don't test our capacity. We get shocked at some point and then we go, oops, I got to keep things lower than this so this never happens again. It doesn't occur to us to test our capacity as we age. It doesn't occur to us to continue to push our limits and see how much more we can actually handle. Most of us tend to retreat. We do it through substance use, through excess shopping, through distracting ourselves with television, through daydreaming, all kinds of avoidance techniques. As I said, like using drugs, drinking alcohols, just trying to zone out and use unhealthy ways to shut our systems down and to shut off the experience from happening. So what we want to do is we want to practice allowing the experiences we have, whether it's emotional, internal, psychological experiences or experience outside of us, we want to allow them to go through their natural arc. Because regardless of what we do or don't do, all things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That whatever this energy is, whatever the intensity is, it cannot sustain itself. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And as we grow our capacity, essentially what we're doing is we're holding on to ourselves and just focusing on keeping our heads above water and managing our stress while the energy goes through its arc. What most of us do is we try to control the arc itself, and that's rarely successful. So as you grow your capacity, you actually have the ability for many, many life experiences to go through their natural arc, and you have the nervous system capacity to handle it. It doesn't mean that we can handle everything we encounter. We certainly cannot. There are things in life that are too much for any person. I don't care who you are, how skillful you are. And what you want to do is understand that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that you don't imagine that if you don't control or stop this, something terrible, someone's going to die or you're going to fly off the planet. That's what we use to justify, that fear justifies shutting it down, usually before we even get close to our capacity. So what we do with this information is we begin to, first of all, observe that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, whether you do anything about it or not. And you can see this in really benign situations with any emotion that you've ever had in your life. You don't still have that emotion at its peak intensity, right? Maybe if you revisit it, it starts to swell up in your body, but it'll go away. And we don't notice the arc. And when we don't notice the arc, we imagine this never-ending stream, peak intensity where we have no container for our suffering. We're just always at this peak intensity, and that's not true. So you are either sleeping and you're not in peak intensity, or you go through the peak intensity and then you sort of forget about it for a minute and then it comes back. We always have breaks. It cannot sustain itself. So as you work with this, you're cognitively giving yourself a different model to work with. So you go into a phase to discover what your actual capacity is, and you also want to understand that you can grow your capacity. So sitting with your capacity would be regulating yourself or just holding on and writing it out as best you can before you shut it down. It doesn't mean you should never shut it down. You have the right to have breaks. You have the right to not suffer. It's just pushing that line a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, until you have the ability to experience something going through its most peak and you're still present. And then to experience with your presence that peak going down and subsiding. And the more you're able to do that, to just get through that arc and break the habit of seeking to shut it down, just break that habit and go through that arc, you actually develop an immense amount of not only capacity, but also your confidence goes up and your resilience. You begin to access your resilience, and it actually helps the fear we have of life itself to subside. So when you learn what your capacity is and you grow your capacity and you learn how to manage yourself while the experiential arc is playing out on its own without your interference, the more that you do that, the more confident you feel, the more rooted you feel, the more centered in yourself you are, the less thrown you are, the less you're going to be fawny or appeasing and trying to placate and shut things down, the more you'll just be able to stand in the intensity of what life is, and that is more fulfilling. Again, the goal is not to sit through any experience. Sometimes that's not healthy. So I'm giving you a way to think about it, and I'm inviting you into trying out sitting with the intensity for as long as you can before you shut it down. And maybe you go 5 seconds longer than you think you can tolerate. that's a win. And then the next time you go another 5 seconds and another 5 seconds before you give in to this sometimes overwhelming urge to shut it down no matter what, because we are convinced that if we don't, it's going to take over and something bad is going to happen. And that's rarely the case. So again, there are extreme cases where you don't want to use this model. You want to really focus on your own safety, and you really want to focus on your own care and well-being. So if you're beginning to have a mental breakdown, if you're in a dangerous situation of some kind with another person, there are a number of scenarios in our lives where this is not the best tool for the job. So have that on your radar as you play with this, and just see what happens if you begin to practice growing your capacity and getting to the point where you can actually let something go through its peak experience, its peak intensity, without you shutting it down. And just notice how you feel once you make it through something like that. It's very empowering, and it's amazing how much capacity we can grow for things that our limited self can't even imagine we could ever tolerate, that we're just convinced the pain of something would kill us, the intensity of something would kill us. And learning as you go through this capacity arc that you can be resilient, and you can be resilient and alive and present and skillful rather than numbing out or dissociating. This is not disconnecting and analyzing something out of existence. This is truly allowing the arc to move through your own body and to fully experience it and surf that wave while it passes on its own. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks. Bye-bye.